Good afternoon. In this video, we're going to go over this week's options watch list. Before I get into the watch list, if you're not in the room, you can find the link in the description of the video and in my bio section of social media accounts. Also, please subscribe to the channel and like the video if you haven't done so already. Well, we had today off. Today's Labor Day, of course, and short week. Probably not much is going to happen. Put to call ratio is pretty high still. Last week, I was expecting a short squeeze that never really happened. So I'm thinking that we're going to get it, hopefully tomorrow or Wednesday, So, yeah, because right now the put to call ratio is 0.81. It's higher than it was last week. So I definitely think that we're going to see a short squeeze. Now, the question is which day is going to be the question. Now, looking at the economic calendar for the week, let's see, tomorrow we get PMI at 9:45 and 10 a.m. Let's see, Wednesday, we get a couple Fed speakers, Mester, Bernard, and Barr. I don't think you see Barr speaking that much, but yeah, he's going to be speaking too. So we got Fed speakers at 10 a.m., 12:35 p.m., and what was it on 2 p.m. They're all Eastern Standard Time. And Thursday morning, unemployment claims at 8:30. Fed Powell is going to speak at 9:10 a.m. What is he going to speak about? He's a discussion at the Cato Institute annual monetary conference via satellite. So who knows? Anytime Powell speaks, whether it's just the market's going to move, regardless of what he says. So we just have to be prepared for that. Remember that he's going to talk before the bell. Friday, a couple of Fed speakers in the afternoon, but nothing happening Friday. So yeah, a short week. I don't know if we're going to have much volume or what's going to happen. We may not have much action. I don't have much of a watch list because of a short week. And I'm thinking that VIX just had a nice little wick day. I mean, it looks like it could go higher, but I'm still thinking, we're going to have a short squeeze, and if that ends up happening, VIX is going to end up dumping. So if VIX does manage to get over 27, it could probably pop to 30, 32, even 34 area real fast, but we'll have to see if that's actually what happens. So VIX, had a nice little wick candle on Friday, but we'll have to see. Somehow that didn't work out too well. There we go. SPY, you can see on the weekly charts what I've been looking at. 3 deep red days, weeks on the weekly. I would think that we might get a nice little bounce. We also like to point out that the daily is at the RCT trend line, which is this orange line. So we usually like to see things bounce there, and I think this is a perfect area for it to bounce. We'll have to see if it actually does or not. So last week, I know I ended up having my short squeeze blinders on and missed a couple moves that I shouldn't have, but I'll try not to have them this week, so I'll emphasize on the word try. But anyways, 390 seems like a pretty good area that it bounced off from. So definitely think if it gets over 395, 400, gets over 400, it's probably going to be a push to 405, 410, 415, even 420. So SPY could have a really ridiculous day. It hasn't had one in a long time. So we'll have to see what happens. Now, SPY can keep going lower. If it does manage to get below 390, you've got 385, 380, 375, basically every $5, 370. If it gets below 370, I mean, it's gonna. The weekly down here is at 365, 362. You can see even run down to say 360. So we'll have to see if that happens. Watch both sides on SPY. I'm kind of surprised that SPY didn't have a ridiculous gap up as of right now. Right now it's only +9, and Sunday night it was like +10. So I kind of figured that because the market was closed today, that we could end up seeing futures up 50 points, because they end up doing sketchy stuff like that when the market's closed and futures is open. They easily manipulate, and they like to push the market when no one's looking. So they do it all the time. It's just surprising that they didn't do it this time, but we'll have to see. So yeah, we're watching SPY underneath 390 and over 400. And I know that's a pretty big area to look at, but if depending on where the market opens tomorrow, I'll adjust the levels tomorrow at before market opens. So that's why you need to be in the room for that. So Apple, I don't really like trading Apple that much anymore because it just doesn't really go anywhere. I mean, the premiums just don't, the Apple has to move $2 or $3 in order for it to go $1 in premium. And you get used to trading SPX and Amazon and Tesla. They move really fast compared to Apple. So Apple, I don't like it, but I do cover it just so people that do like to play it know what to look for. Apple, I mean, gets below 150, 450. I think you can easily get down to 150. Then you get this 148 level, 145, 143, 140. If the SPY does end up squeezing, I would even watch it over 160 for a push to 162, 164, 166, 168, 170. So it is going to be heavily dependent on what SPY does this week. Apple and most of the stocks they play, they move with the market. So once in a while, you get ones that really don't move with it, which I'm going to go over Netflix in a few minutes. But Apple, definitely keep an eye on Microsoft. One thing I like about Microsoft, why am I not typing right today? Microsoft, is that Microsoft gets down to this 250 level, it likes to bounce. I mean, it's done it so many times on the weekly, here, and here. It just, every time it gets down to 250, it likes to bounce. So if it does end up selling off, I definitely watch it in the 250 area to see if people come in and start buying the dip and start buying that. But it's tested it so many times too, where if it even gets to 250, that it could end up breaking right through it. And if it does break through it, I mean, it could really have a significant drop to 240, 230, 220. I mean, and this 210 area that I got right here, but I don't know. So we'll have to see if what happens with the market this week and if it ends up selling off or not. But Microsoft, definitely watching the 250 area for possible bounce on that. Tesla, I'm looking at this from the short side still. If the market is weak, that I would suspect that this is going to end up dropping more. So I would watch it underneath 265 for push to 260, 255. Then you get a gap fill right down here, the 252, 250 area. I think 250 is going to be a solid area for it to bounce. So we could definitely see it sell off and try to fill the gap down here if the market's weak. Sometimes, even when the market is not weak, Tesla just ends up having a mind of its own. So we'll have to see what it does. But yeah, if it does get below this 265, we could definitely see possibly say a gap fill on that. So Amazon is another one. Let me see right here. Same thing, basically, if it does manage to get below, we'll see 125, it can make it drop down to 120, 115. But also if the market's strong, I mean, I'd be watching it in both directions. I'd probably even be more apt to take it in the long side over 132 for a push to 135, 140, 145. Because I guess it really hasn't filled the gap. It's come close. What's the low on this? 123.66. And yeah, it hasn't really quite filled the gap yet. So it could end up dropping a little more down to the 122 area, 120 area before it ends up taking off. But we'll have to see what happens on that. So Netflix is the last one I'll be looking at. Now Netflix, I'm actually quite surprised that the week we've had, with the market the last couple weeks. You know, Netflix has been holding very well, but I want to point out a couple things. One, it's got a head and shoulders. You get the left, you get the head and the right shoulder. So if it does manage to get under 220, it could end up dropping down to 210, even down to the 205, 200 area. But because it's been holding so well against the market sell-off, that I would definitely keep an eye on it over the, well, you can see to 232 area for push to 235, 240, 245, 250. So yeah, I would definitely, 250 is resistance on gap resistance on the daily. Now, as you can see, this is where earnings gap down, came back up, rejected gap, resistance right there, pulled back some consolidated. So if it does manage to get back up to gap resistance, it could end up trying to fill a gap. So we'll have to see if that ends up happening. So if it does manage to get back up to gap resistance, it's going to have a huge cup and handle, cup and the handle, if it does happen. Right now, I'm all assuming everything. So we'll just have to see what happens. But Netflix is definitely setting up for a monster move if it does make the cup and handle pattern on the daily and take off. So make a note that you know that it's there and that it could end up taking off and playing out. So that's going to do it for the watch list. Not really much because it's a short week. Who knows if we're going to have much volume. Next week will be the big week as far as being a full week and more volume coming back and stuff like that. So, so that's going to do it for the video. Thanks for watching and hope to see you in the room.